And we are now live with all the imagination chapters. So we'll start off on my right. My right, we have Tonya, and Tonya's in North Carolina. We have Smita, who is in Los Angeles. Dee, where are you?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Dee she's in Tennessee. And then, of course, we've got the Three Stooges. Are you guys in LA at the moment? You're on mute at the moment, so you might have to unmute yourselves.
Hi, I'm Kirsten, and I'm usually from Westport, Connecticut, but I'm in LA this week, so I joined here.
Yay.
Awesome.
Hi, Christina, LA.
LA.
And I'm Kathy, and I think you guys all know who I am. I'm so excited to see you here.
Awesome, awesome. So it's going to be a fun, creative opportunity to demonstrate an activity that we've done with our chapter before. And I know that the theme is all about innovation and how to get your chapter members to be creative and innovative. So I put together 1 or 2 points, and of course, I'll share the document with you so that, you know, if you want all the points, they are there. And 5 key steps to making your what do we call them? Chapter members, chapter students, the Imagineers. What do we call them? Do we have a name for them? Participants? I don't know. So let's call them participants. The first rule is to be easygoing. And I think that if you've got a relaxed and flexible play environment, that generally increases the productivity, because when it's not rigid, that generally allows the ideas to flow. So, and I will give you examples of each of these as well. Number 2, when you for your chapter, I think it's important to look for passionate thinkers, kids who and not all of you can pick and choose who's coming to your chapter. The opportunity to pick and choose. It's always good to have passionate kids, and not necessarily the kids that are academic, not necessarily the sporty ones, just the ones who are interested and curious and want to share ideas and want to talk and discuss, because they certainly make the chapters a lot more fruitful. It's important to also bring on people who love to play. A lot of people are quite serious and they want to do academics, and that's not what a chapter is about. I think if you want people to discover things and to learn and through observation and play, it's very important that they are comfortable to actually play, and that includes the adults that are running the chapters as well. 4, and this is a strong point from my side, and that is to encourage diversity. A mix of genders and colors and ages and religions. Diversity just brings new ideas, and it also allows children to challenge their own worldviews. You know, when you're young, you believe a certain thing, and then when you're exposed to other people, you also believe, well, hold on, maybe that's not the be-all and end-all. Maybe there are other ways of looking at it. And that's quite important. And then the 5th step that I thought was quite important was to acknowledge the steps that have been taken and celebrate everything. And I do feel quite strongly about that, you know, it's not always about the destination. The journey is so important. And some kids, for example, are a little bit reluctant to try certain things. They're a bit afraid. And if they make one little step, then you just encourage them. And then that gives them a little bit more motivation and confidence to take on the next step. And what happens inevitably is when they reach the end, they look back at what they've actually achieved and they go, wow, did I really do that? That was amazing. I almost gave up at the beginning, but you know, because you were encouraging, I decided to stick with it. And that's also quite important as well. So I thought I'd give you examples of how these points actually come to play. So the first point was, you know, be easygoing. Chapter we try being preachy or controlling when it comes to idea generation. We want to allow kids to express themselves, and sometimes just to push that point even further, we encourage wild and frivolous ideas as part of the process, because that means that if they're all going to come up with crazy ideas, no one feels uncomfortable because their idea might be seen as crazy. And generally that is a very helpful exercise in our chapter, especially with the big age differences. Recruiting passionate thinkers. You know, I always look for students who have passion, and I don't mean, you know, students that are just excited. I'm talking about passionate, and it could be that they are ardently against it. They're passionately against it. But if they've got passion, it means that they've got wheels. And with wheels, you could push them in so many directions and allow them to move around and explore. But on the other hand, I also like the introverts. You know, when they come to the program, they need to also be given a space where we don't force the spotlight on them, but they are still comfortable enough to contribute. The third one was bring people who love to play. If you have kids that are too cool to play, a lot of the teenagers, then what happens is they go, no, I don't feel like doing this. And that hampers the teamwork, and that can also slow the creativity process. And it, in my opinion, it dampens the mood a little bit. So if you are going to be working with teenagers, then you have to pick and choose activities that get them very excited. But bear in mind that if they're too cool to play, then they kind of miss out on all the good stuff. And number 4, encourage diversity. You know, I think it's so important that children get to learn about each other, because that also helps them to learn about themselves. And they also learn how everyone fits in the world. And if you have a young girl and there's an older girl in the group, you have a built-in role model. If you have a young boy of color and a young girl of color, and they see each other achieving success, then you put out a very clear message that color makes no difference when it comes to achieving success. So if people of all ages and genders and ages are just kind of mixing together and doing stuff, then people stop thinking around those lines and start looking at each other as people. And I think that's also a very important aspect for getting people together at the chapters, because it's not just about learning and making and creating. It's about, you know, finding where we fit in the world and how we can positively impact other people. And then the 5th point, of course, was acknowledge the steps that were taken. We encourage and applaud the students that make even the smallest effort. And you know how some of the younger kids are. When you ask them to try this, they don't know where to start, so they just say, no, I don't feel like doing this. It doesn't mean they don't want to do it. It means that they don't understand what you've asked them to do. So it's learning how to give them that kind of support and encourage them. And it helps when you've got more than one facilitator at the sessions to kind of spend a little bit of time with them during the activities. And of course, every step that they achieve, because they get the applause and the high fives and the support, it then motivates them to take on the next step. And we all know that when we reflect and we look at, in retrospect, at the journey that we took to get there, the fact that we actually managed to achieve it, we get a greater sense of satisfaction when it comes to the various activities. So those were the actual guidelines that I like to give people when it comes to innovating with your particular members. But I thought the best way to demonstrate this is to actually do an activity with you. So the way I would normally start an activity is with a story. Once upon a time, there was a very famous artist, and his name was Leonardo da Vinci. Now, of course, I'm sure many of you know Leonardo da Vinci. He was not only an artist, but he was also a famous scientist. He did medical drawings. He did many creative inventions. We still have the plans today. He wrote in unusual codes. He was just a very fascinating, talented guy. And a lot of people would wonder, how did he come up with so many ideas? For example, with his paintings. You know, if you're copying someone's face, that's one thing. But how do you invent an original face? Hello, Izzy. Welcome.
Yay!
It's so cool that Izzy's joining us. So,
everybody.
so for those of you who don't know, Izzy is out in Italy at the moment, or have you moved?
No. Still in Italy until mid-July.
Okay. So July from her. And we were just talking about creativity and how to encourage that and foster that, the chapters. So what I'm going to do is illustrate how Leonardo da Vinci came up with his ideas to create an original picture. And he developed a thing called the idea box. Have you ever heard of the idea box before? No? Okay. So I'm going to share screen, and I'm hoping, you never know, but sometimes it works. If it doesn't work, I've got a plan B. I'm going to share. Where is my folder? Here we go. And I'll load up this particular photo over here. Idea box. And here we go. Leonardo idea box. And I'll try and zoom in so that you can view the whole thing on your screen. There. And now let me share screen. And is it behaving? I believe it is. Tell me if you guys can see the picture on your screen. You've all muted yourself. So if one of you just wants to unmute and just let me know, can you actually see the picture on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the general ideas is quite simple. He wrote down head, eyes, nose, mouth, and chin. He wrote down a bunch of descriptions for different types of heads, different types of eyes, different types of noses, different types of mouth, and different types of chin. And then he took his pen and went boop, boop. Or he could have written down numbers and randomly selected a number, or asked someone to select one number from each column. And if he had, for example, a furrowed forehead, sunken eyes, a thick snub nose with a drooping mouth and a receding chin, then that would be the inspiration for him to create that particular picture. And of course, it just depends on the luck of the draw. So he could try and invent an idea, or he could get a little bit of inspiration by being pushed in the various directions. So I thought what we would do is we have, I must zoom in, it says. Christina said I must zoom in. Christina, if you look at the top of the page, I'll just share the link again. Copy link address, and I'll post it here in the chat. If you look in the chat, this is a link to the drive with the actual document in. So you can actually view it on your PC. And so what I did was I created an idea box for games where we can actually invent our very own game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that picture on the screen. Let's just see if the computer is behaving. And I'm going to go to, maybe it'll work. Where is the idea game? Invent a game grid. Here we go. And I'm going to just try and zoom in a little bit so that you can visualize. Okay, let's do that. And I think we've got them all in. That's good. And now let's go to share screen. Did we lose Izzy for a bit? There we go. Right. And just let me know if you guys can all see the grid. You can wave your hands in the air. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So the game grid is quite simple. we have environment, we have objective, we have structure, we have action, we have roles, we have equipment, and we have fantasy or ritual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing the screen. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories. Right, 7 categories. And I think we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 7 people. Each of you is going to pick a number from 1 to 10. Have you got one? Okay, so Kirsten, you go first. You're going with number 5. And Christina, what are you going with? 2. Catherine, what are you going to go with? She's hiding away, not there. Oh, she's going with 2. And then D, what are you going to go with? 6. Okay. 6. And then Smita, you've got 3. Let's go with 3. And Ton, you're going with? Is that 7? Looks like 7 to me. And I'll go with 4. Okay, so we've chosen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different random numbers. And now I'm going to put that sheet back on the screen. Let's go back to our game grid. Okay. The first number that you chose was a 5. So are you still seeing the screen on your side? Is that correct? Yeah. So number 5 would be a field. So this is a game that's going to take place in a field. You might want to take down notes and write that down. I'm going to make a note of that. So it's a field game. The next one, number 2, the objective involves tagging. So some sort of tagging will take place in the game. Number 2, again, there is a square structure. Okay, so I'm already picturing the field and how we're going to structure the game. Now, next is number 6. 6 people are going to be leaders in this game. All right, so now we've got to think about how we would involve leaders in this game. Number 3 for the roles. Oh, no, for number equipment. Number 3, ropes. Okay, I can already picture what's going to be happening here. This is very interesting. And then we've got number 7. 7 is, it's got something to do with the song. Okay, a song and leaders. So now I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. You are going to think about that for a minute or two, and on your own, you're going to develop an idea for a game. And then you're going to report to all of us, and we're going to collaborate and kind of work towards maybe 1 or 2 games that we think are games we can actually play with the kids at a chapter, like a real chapter. The action. Oh, did I skip one? I think I skipped one. That's why we had an extra number. So let's choose 4. 4 was crawling, so there'll be crawling in it as well. Thanks for spotting that. Crawling. Right. So now you know the categories. We have a field. It's a tagging game. There are leaders involved. There will be rope. There's a square. There will be crawling. And the theme of the game is that it's a type of song. So imagine how you would put all of those things together in a game. I'm going to start thinking of ideas now myself. Hmm. Okay. Okay, I've got a game. I'll give you guys some time to think about it. Of course, when you're doing this with a large group, there'll be robust discussions and a lot of arguing over how the game could work and my idea is better than your idea and all those sorts of things. That's why I haven't done anything about it. I'm just giving you a chance to first come up with ideas. And the wilder and the crazier the ideas, the better it is and the more interesting the game will be. And you never know, this could become the next Red Rover or Stuck in the Mud, or it could become an awesome game that people around the world start playing and had no idea that it was invented purely because we used an idea box. I can see a lot of rock, paper, scissors happening in LA at Tom and Tom's Coffee. And they've got no volume because they've muted themselves. So I'm just going to try and lip read and see what they say. So are you guys done at the cafe there? You're welcome if you want to, and then we can hear some other ideas. So Kirsten, you guys can go first. You just need to unmute yourselves. Have you clicked on your microphone? They've gone a bit quiet. Have you? Did you just unmute yourself on the top, and then we can hear you? There we go. Okay. Perfect.
Great. Number 5 reporting in. So I tend to think holistically and then make it make sense. So the first thing, when you said it was 4 and there's ropes and it's crawling, I pictured a bunch, I teach middle school, so I pictured a bunch of middle schoolers crawling on the ground in a square with ropes. And I thought this could be atrocious. So to keep it cohesive, have you ever made these pot holders with the little square loom and you get those round loops? Can you see it? Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
That giant size. So now every kid gets a loop and they hook it up to one side and they crawl. And every time they have to weave up and over someone, if they run into someone, whoever tags the other person first has to start over with their loop. So they got to go back, and then they got to weave again and tag. So it's potholder large scale. I don't have a better name for it yet. So that was my idea, but there's 3 of us here.
Oh, I don't have one. It's her.
What? No,
Her.
there's 2 of us.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let's hear it, Christina.
I've never had to make one of those potholders. So I immediately thought field and tagging work really well together. So it's going to be a form of freeze tag where the leaders have to crawl to tag people. So it's a little bit harder. But once they do tag someone, they are frozen until they finish singing happy birthday. And their goal is to run to a roped off circle for safety.
Okay. That's like a variation on a theme. And what you'll notice is that your ideas might resemble a game that someone might know, which is quite typical of what the kids would do. They're going to take inspiration from things they already know. But what will happen is if we keep hearing all these ideas, we might be stealing some of little bits from each and creating a better game than we originally first started with, which is what kids tend to do. So Dee, do you have a game?
Okay, so here's my game. So I had a square, and that's going to be the rope. The rope is going to be laid out in a square on the ground. And then someone will stand in the very middle of the rope, or in the middle of the square, and they will start a song. And as they start singing, everybody's going to crawl around the rope and sing the song. But there's one person who's not singing out loud. They're just mouthing the words. So the person that's the leader has to figure out who it is that's actually not singing, and they tag them when they figure them out. I think that's it.
That is pretty cool.
And
What was interesting is that your take was on the singing part and the mouthing, whereas maybe Christina was looking at a different aspect, and then of course Kirsten was coming out with the weaving and stuff. So and also depends on who your target audience is, because not all kids will want to play stuck in the mud. So you've got to try and balance your game. If you're aiming for preschoolers or if you're aiming for middle schoolers, there's always going to be a difference. Smita, what did you come up with?
Okay, so mine is sort of
very good so far. I'm just acknowledging your efforts and telling you what a great job you have done so far. Okay.
great. So mine is sort of a combination of games I think all of us know, but so I'm envisioning a square field, and you've got 2 teams of kids on each side. They'll start by playing Red Rover. So they'll play 4 times. So they'll identify and tag kids who they want to bring to their side. So they'll play that 4 times so that each side will get to choose 2 that they want. Then they'll play a game of tug of war. So 1 big rope in the middle. They'll play tug of war with their respective groups. And then you'll have 2 leaders on each side at the back of each rope, commanding and telling the team what to do. The group that falls a tug of war will have to crawl to the other side. And the last crawler, so the slowest person, is out. And you'll play again. And I guess you'll keep playing until you have no one left.
Okay, brilliant. And Tanya, what did you come up with?
It's a version of a freeze tag. We've got 2 teams. It's on a square-shaped field. There are leaders who must tag others to put them in jail where our ropes are, and the leaders are only allowed they have to crawl when there's someone in jail. So to make it a little bit harder, you have to crawl when someone's in jail. To get out of jail, you can sing a TV theme song. If you don't know when, you have to stay in there, and you win when you have at least 3 people in your jail.
Very nice. Sure. So and now we've got Catherine joining in on her own. Oh, I think they were having problems with the other one. Is that better, Catherine?
Yay,
the computer. Okay. So the hearing is that obviously there's a commonality between taking ideas of games that we already know, and that is a very common thing for people to do when it comes to the Invent a Game grid, because you always invent games according to what you know.
Yeah.
Oh, and we've got a new guest joining us as well. Hello.
Hi, Sienna. Type it.
Sienna.
Hi. She's really excited to see you. Hi.
Hi. That is
I'm gonna
so
listen
cool.
in. Thanks for letting her join.
Oh, I'm glad. So now, obviously, as a chapter leader, you're going to have a lot of people in your group who are going to say, "Oh, you know, so what is your idea?" And then you give your idea, and they go, "Oh, you know, maybe mine isn't so good." So I don't give my idea first. I want to give them a chance to express themselves, which is very important. And I'm going to commend everyone on the efforts they have made. Then what I might do is I might say, well, maybe chat to the people next to you and tell them which parts of their game that you like and maybe which parts you'd want to steal for your game. And what that does is it encourages teamwork, but they are telling them which part of the game they actually like. So they're getting positive reinforcement, and then the people are taking the best of all the games and putting it into their game. Just for fun, I had about 10 different ideas on how this game could be played. For some unknown reason, I thought we could have 4 leaders standing in the corners, and there are 4 ropes. So you can imagine each person in the corner is holding onto 2 ropes. And on each rope, different little things tied. And your teammates have to crawl to go grab one of those things off the rope and to go take it back to your team's rope and tie it on there. So you've got to try and collect all the different little bandanas. But the funniest thing is that, of course, you can only travel with a bandana if you are singing. And then I thought to myself, well, hold on. What would happen if the leaders could yank the rope out of the hands of the others? So if you're not concentrating, you could actually pull the rope and then grab some of those bandanas and then pass them on to your crawlers, who will then take them back. And then I started thinking, hold on, what about a sing-off? What would happen if you have your 4 leaders and your teams, and they're all in the corners, and the first team starts singing with one particular word like love? You have to come up with a song with the word love, and you have to sing a little bit of it to prove that you know the song. If you've got the song, then the next team has to go, and they have to sing a song with the word love in, and you keep going until one of the team duplicates a song that's already been done, or until your team runs out of ideas for a song. If they do, they drop out, and the last team standing is the song group champion. And of course, you know, while that is going on, you know, if a team then it gets knocked out, whoever is before them gets to take one of their bandanas or scarves so that they can keep it for themselves. And then you want to see who's going to be the last team and who scored the most bandanas. I mean, these are just like ideas that start flowing out of my head with no structure. It's just about throwing ideas out, and then I get to share that with you. And some of you are going, hold on, I like that one idea. I'm not so cool about the other idea, but maybe you could do this or that. So now we're going to take wild ideas that have been thrown out, and let's have a discussion. We're going to have a bit of noise. You can unmute yourselves, and we're going to have a bit of discussion. Which ideas jump out at you, and what things do you think we should go for?
I like the sing off.
Yeah, I like the sing off idea.
We can't all stick with one idea. We have to take a little bit of some of the ideas that we've heard and try and put them in a game with the sing-off. I mean, I'm loving the.
I love that. Yeah.
So somehow, if there was a sing-off, could you use a bit of weaving in that? And you guys, Catherine, you might have to unmute yourselves.
If they could sing as they wove in and out of the ropes, that would be different from them standing on the corners.
True.
But they could sing to the other side.
And maybe the fact that they have to weave and sing makes it even more challenging because your concentration level is not so good.
Yes.
You might not be paying attention to which songs are being sung.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I need to hear from you.
I
Children,
I love the weaving idea. I don't know how I would implement it into a game. That's what I'm trying to think about right now. But I think I just love that concept of like having just one of those massive squares with the ropes. I just think that's really cool. But I'm trying to think creatively about how we can implement it. Nothing's coming to me right now.
You've sparked an idea. So weaving doesn't necessarily have to happen with ropes. It could happen with people where string and a spoon is tied to the end of it. You have to weave it down your shirt, all the way down your pants, through the pants leg, up the next person who goes up the pants leg, all the way up through the shirt, to your entire team.
So you're woven together.
Run as a team while you're all woven together.
That's pretty cool.
So what you'll see is that in the creative process, the ideas start bouncing off each other. And eventually, after a while, I might go back and rethink some of the ideas that I had and some of the ideas that I heard and put that together. And just as a way of demonstrating the effectiveness of this, we came up with this game that we did at the Imagination chapter, and then we played it the following week. It was such a funny game. There are 4 children. They all stand in 4 corners, and each corner has a ball. And what you need to do is collect all the other balls and put them in your corner. But of course, every time you leave your corner to go grab a ball, someone is going to grab your ball and take it back to their corner. So these kids played the game for about 5 or 6 minutes, and they suddenly realized that no one's going to win and they're going to be absolutely exhausted. So if you have a group of kids and you want to do a warm-up activity just to exhaust them, we discovered this was really fun. And then we did get a winner because you never know who's going to go to which corner. So some people started strategizing. Do we go for the slower kid? Do we go for the older kid, the younger kid? Because if we go there, we know who they're going to target. So then we should go for the opposite corner. And games started to develop strategy, which was quite fascinating to see as well. So I think that what is amazing is that we chose 7 numbers at random, and we came up with approximately 6 or 7 different games, all ideas that are in progress and could become one final game or a bunch of games out of that. And that was because we just chose 7 random numbers. So can you imagine if you gave the kids, a chance to choose? They can roll the die, they can pick, you can get a random number generator that just throws out, a number from 1 to 10. And you could also change the grid a little bit. You can maybe add extra categories so that could help the younger kids to create better games. And why stop at games? Maybe you want to invent a story. So you could then have different parts of a story, and they have to then make up a story involving those parts. So if we did take the grid and we used those numbers, maybe we could do a story that was based on that. So I don't know, let's see if we can do a story off the top of our head. Let's put ourselves under pressure. Here's the grid. It was field and it was tagging. So once upon a time, there was a field. And of course, when the kids do this, they go, once upon a time, there was a field and people were playing tag in the field. And then they saw a square. So what they do is they recite the different parts of the actual thing. So you want to try and teach them to be creative and not just mention the word, but they have to kind of involve it directly in the story. It can't just be incidental that there's a square in the middle of the field. So they have to be creative. So they might say, once upon a time, there was a field and a guy discovered a square frame in the middle of the field. And of course, everyone was wondering what it was. So they decided they were going to flip a coin or draw sticks to see who was going to go and investigate and touch it. And of course, when they get there, they noticed that, and the next one was, what was it? Crawling. They decided to crawl as close as they could to the square because they were obviously quite scared. And the ones who were crawling were obviously nominated as the leaders because the other ones were too petrified to go anywhere near it. When they did get there, they saw some ropes hanging out. And when they pulled the ropes, a specific song started to play. And they couldn't get that song out of their head. It was like an earworm. And they decided to investigate and they climbed into the square. And you're going to have to wait until next week to find out what's going to happen. So what we've just done is we could create, obviously that was just an arbitrary example, but you could put characters, you could put props, you could make a story grid. And for that day, they can invent their own stories. And then maybe you can get them to act them out and film them on green screen, or maybe make a Prezi or an animated video or a stop motion video using various, the Lego Movie Maker has a great app, a free app on iPad that allows you to do stop motion action, so the kids can actually make their own movies. And you never know. I mean, something could, but it really is about, if you've got writer's block or you've got inventor's block and you can't come up with an idea, this is a technique that generally assists you in coming up with creative ideas. So I would love to hear your comments on things that you've learned from today's session, any feedback, any questions about the process, that type of thing. And if you're all quiet, then it means you've got nothing to say. But I'm sure that, Catherine, you guys are discussing stuff, so you must unmute so we can. The question is there any feedback that you have for me in terms of how these could feature in your chapters? What have you learned from the session today? What do you think we could do differently? Just general feedback that after experiencing this particular session. Yeah, go first. You want to?
Pick me. Can you hear me?
Okay, so we'll go with first, and then we'll go with D next.
Okay. Hi. So what I like about this is it gives you a chance to brainstorm first. So you've got the categories. You brainstorm a bunch of things for the categories, but then you're forced to make a choice. In fact, a random choice based on guessing the numbers. So now you're constrained, which is one of the things that makes creativity thrive. You brainstorm and then you constrain it, and then you've got to be clever to work your way through that, which clearly you do on a regular basis. We're sitting here, the three of us are just like, Steve Sherman is a volcano of awesome ideas. And we want our children to go to whatever camp you have. We're going to fly them to South Africa to be with Steve Sherman, the Pied Piper. So
I am coming your way in July. I'm going to be
Brilliant.
but of course, not on the West Coast, but hold on, not on the West Coast, but maybe the following year. We want to actually bring some kids up for a space camp, and that'll be out in near Alabama. But then we want to also maybe do some visits to Kennedy Space Center, maybe go to Florida. You know, maybe we should go to LA and Hollywood because, you know, there's a lot going on there too. So, are you and SpaceX? Hello.
Yeah, SpaceX in LA.
So yes, we want to do.
is here too. Don't forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have Disneyland.
Well, Disney World, Disneyland, which one? You know, we have to toss up. It's a tough decision. So the world is our oyster, but I think that it all starts with connecting with people first, and that's why, you know, what I call professional development. You know, we do this with all the other teachers that I work with online. We meet regularly to share ideas of a new app that's just come out, and we show each other how to use it, and then we ask questions about it, and then what normally happens is I say, lovely app, I'm going to contact the guys who developed it, and I'm going to give them feedback. And that's what happened with Kahoot. I don't know if you've ever played Kahoot before.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've got now a very strong relationship with Johan, the CEO, and he actually flew down to Cape Town to meet me so we could look at how we could develop Kahoot and put more maths content into it. And we spoke about, you know, all the new things that, you know, I said to him, the problem is that people can't play on their phones if they can't see the question. And then they brought out the new homework feature that you can now send the quiz home to people on their device and give them a time limit. So they have to answer it all within a time limit, and they can see the question and answers on their device. And they've really, I mean, Apple just launched their new package or bouquet of educational content that they want to market on the iPads to schools. And Kahoot was the homework package of choice that Apple chose. So that's a big deal when Apple obviously points at a product like Kahoot. So, and this weekend I'm actually running Kahoot sessions on behalf of Kahoot. They're actually using me as the ambassador to go and promote it. So, you know, things come out because of professional development and connecting. So, you know, you might see this is a good idea. Why don't we do this more regularly? And actually, if we stream it live and then we have the YouTube video, people can actually share maybe one topic a month. But guess what? You've now got 12 lesson plans at the end of the year. So, and we are going to be losing Tanya. She says she's got to go. She's up for anything. So I think she's just volunteered to run the next professional development. No. You said anything. So, and I think what is key is to, you know, if people are too shy to run the session, then maybe we need to run a session on how to run a session. And maybe even not do a full session, but let's just do one person gets to introduce a 5-minute idea, something that they've done with their chapter that worked, show us some photographs, tell us where it went right, where it went wrong, and then we kind of brainstorm with ideas on how we could adapt it for our chapter. Have you tried this, etc. So for example, you might be sitting there thinking, you know, it's funny you should say that, but you know, we would love to do more science in our chapter. And what you could do is an egg drop, which is really cool. You go find a building that's got 3 stories and you give 4 teams, you give each of them an empty egg box, a napkin, a piece of string, some tape, maybe 2 sticks, you know, the ones that you use to make kebabs and stuff. You just give them arbitrary things and you say to them, that's all you have, and you've got to now build a home for that egg, because when you drop the egg from the first story, your egg has to survive. And what they all do is they build a little casing, shock absorbers and everything, and they all drop the egg from standing on a chair. And then if none of them are leaking, They are then allowed to move to the next level. And you keep going until all of a sudden you reach a point where there's one that hasn't broken yet, and they are the last team to win. And you get to talk about what sort of shock absorbers were protecting the egg. Would it work better if you put the egg in a jar of peanut butter? Would it work better if you... So you start looking at little things, but I do realize that not everyone feels comfortable to present an idea, and not everyone is confident to have a global audience around them. So then what they could do is maybe share an idea with someone who's willing to present it on their behalf. Or maybe we could have a Google Doc and we could do a question and answer series where we could ask them questions instead of them having to present. And I think that's more of a natural process where if I ask you about something that you've done and you haven't prepared for it, it's much easier to answer questions and more comfortable that way. But you know, we've got 1, 2, let's say 6 or 7 of us here. There might be another 5 or 6 chapters that do want to present, and they might have brilliant ideas. I know that if you gave Steve Auslander, who's at his doctor's appointment, if you gave him a chance, he would jump at the opportunity. And I think that that is critical, that if we can do professional development, not only do we learn from each other, not only do we get to share and connect, but that interpersonal relationship makes it so much more valuable to me. And, you know, when I get to ISTE, there are going to be about 25 teachers that I've been working with for the past 5 to 6 years that I haven't met in real life. I've only ever known them online. And we are all getting together for the first time in Chicago, which is going to be amazing. And I can guarantee you, when we do get to meet, it's going to be as if we had just met. Like we've known each other for ages, and it's going to be a comfortable connection. I don't think it's going to be one of those, you know, I wonder what they really like in real life. It's as if we know each other, which I think is pretty cool. And I think the same thing would happen with us if we all got together. You never ever know, but I've got a good feeling that the kind of people that we are habitual givers. We like sharing, we like learning, we like doing. Those kinds of personality traits mean that we'll probably all get on very well together as well. And that's always a good thing, I think. So any other feedback or any questions that you might have?
I was going to say.
Go ahead.
You going first, Dee?
Me? Okay. So I was going to say, I love the grid of that, of the handout thing that you had, of the idea box, because I think what that does is you can plug anything in that, and it also kind of levels the playing field. You know, if you've got some kids that are super creative and then some in the group that are not, they're all working with the same process. So everybody's on the same playing field. And I think in my groups, that's real important, because they can either get competitive or kind of pull back because they don't feel like they're, you know, like everybody's on the same level. So I think that's awesome. I love that. I'll be using that.
What you could do is you could adapt it into a TV game where you just tweak it a little bit, and then they have to create their own game in Scratch based on the characteristics. You could also change the way they choose the things. You could put hats for each different category with all the little pieces of paper scrumpled up, and each person will take one from each category, and then they will reveal what they landed up with. So in their case, you won't have 2 people with a field. They will just have, for example, a different venue for their games to be played. Yeah. So there are many variations on a theme.
Yeah, I like that.
Steve, do you have any final thoughts as we close out the session? Do you want to leave us with any words of wisdom?
This was a wonderful opportunity to launch a new project of collaboration between chapter leaders where we do professional development. I think that is pretty cool. I know that you have been doing sessions, you know, it was more like, you know, people touch base and asking how things are going. But I think that we actually could put together a timetable of, you know, 5 people who are willing to run one session, even if it's 20 minutes. And people who can't make it can still watch the video afterwards. And we build up a library of cool activities, which by watching the video, you'll catch on very quickly and you'll get a whole bunch of ideas anyway. So that's just my parting thought.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. This was really wonderful. It was really good to see everyone. It was really good to be with these ladies.
This was so fun. This was great.
So, and this will be archived, yes? So,
Yes, I'll
you know,
send
if
you
you want
right
to
now the YouTube video.
or recommend it to someone you know, it'll be there. So
Awesome.
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 thanks so much, Steve.
So good to see you guys all. Thank you.